State. It's one of his favorite quotes, and I adopted it. Like I said, this isn't a goal. You don't say, okay, I'm going to get 6 months worth of food and water, extra clothes, a bazooka, a flamethrower, and a Humvee, and then I'm done. This is a constant, you need to be constantly learning, constantly seeing what's going on, what's working for people, what's not working for people, and evaluating. And I mean, I believe this quote pretty much defines the two types of people that we have in our world. People would say, okay, well, I graduated college, I'm done. And then the rest of us that are like, okay, no, I'm not done. I'm still learning, you know. Some parting thoughts. Don't let this become an obsession. I have seen people that have gotten into this and it's all they do, 24/7. It's all they think about. Just go off the deep end on it. Be careful who you take your advice from. I tell people, question everything. Look at both sides of the coin. I don't care who's telling you. I don't care if it's Glenn Beck and the Pope or standing on TV telling you the exact same thing. Go look at the flip side of the coin and make sure that there's not something else that you're not hearing. Be careful who you ally yourself with. Be careful who you end up. You know, it's easy. There are a lot of extremist groups that are also into the survivalism aspect of it. Like I said, I prefer to be think of as a prepper than a survivalist. But there are typically several ways to do the same thing. I'm a Glock man. I love Glocks. Carried a Glock ever since I've been a police officer. Fits my hand well. I can shoot well with it. I've got friends that are Colt guys. I've got friends that are Springfield guys. I've got friends that, you know, carry other types of guns. Does that mean they're doing it wrong? No, that's what works for them. There are typically several ways of doing the same thing on all aspects of this. And finally, keep some normal friends. My Facebook list of people that I know include liberals from up in the Northeast, rednecks from Georgia, tree-loving hippies from out in California and Colorado, people that I've known from my travels. I respect their opinions. They're intelligent people. They don't see things the way I do. Am I 100% right? No. Are they 100% wrong? No. I respect them for who they are, and when we get together and we talk, we respect each other even though we don't always agree. And it's important that you don't surround yourself solely by the people that are exactly like you, because you're going to lose out on a lot of aspects of what made America the country that it is. And when you get into this preparedness, don't only talk to people about preparedness. I've got a whole group of friends that we don't talk about this. We don't talk about politics, we don't talk about religion, and we don't talk about disasters, end of the world scenarios. You know, it's important to remain balanced on that kind of stuff. That's my email right there, and the last page of that deal is some recommended reading. One of them is that 1 Second After book. Another one that I would highly recommend, because it's interesting to read, is this one. It's called Surviving the Economic Collapse. This was written by a fellow in Argentina that when Argentina went from being a first world country to pretty much a third world country. There are scenarios different than ours if we have an economic collapse, because Argentina is pretty much a homogeneous society. Everybody in Argentina, for the most part, is the same race, ethnic background, religion. Our diversity is actually something that might be an issue for us in an economic collapse, but there's a lot of lessons in there. When he was writing this book, he turned to his wife and he said, what was one of the things you would do if you knew the collapse was going to happen? And she said, I would have bought a lot more food. He can still get food after the collapse, but if they would have had that extra amount of insurance, it wouldn't have been so difficult for them. They wouldn't have been making the choice between paying the electric bill and feeding the kids. The other reason why this is so interesting is English is by far not his first language, so it's kind of a fun read, because there's a lot of stuff in there that you're like, yeah, that word, we didn't use that right. So I just enjoyed reading it. It's a good book, and there's some other stuff on there. If you want to go down the self-sufficiency route, this is a book written called The Accidental Farmers. This guy and his wife lived on a golf course and worked for a Fortune 500 company up in Atlanta. He takes his wife to the country for the weekend, and they say, you know, it'd be great if we could live out in the country. Well, they both kind of work from, well, she was a special ed teacher, but they both, you know, could work from home if they wanted to. So they said, well, let's buy some land and get out of the city. Well, they end up being full-scale farmers, basically. Neither one of them has any idea what they're doing. And so it's the story of their journey from being yuppies to being, they're not certified organic farmers, but they are organic farmers. And he talks about that. It's also an interesting read, and, you know, it's kind of, will give some people some hope that, you know.
They did a television show on it.
Yeah, they've done a television show on this, and he's got a podcast. It's just been a blast to listen to.
I don't mean about him. I'm talking about that one back in the 50s. There was a television show.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Moved from the city.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody earlier. I said it's kind of interesting because I know back in the 70s we kind of had a back to the farm movement, and now we've got another kind of back to the earth movement. And believe it or not, for those of you that remember or have heard stories of the Victory Gardens in World War II, home gardens have not been as high as they are now since World War II Victory Gardens. You know, there's something going on. Everybody, I don't know if they're just worried about the future or they're worried about where their food comes from or both, but there's a movement going on to try to get some of those skills back that have been lost in the last couple of generations. So, anyway, any questions? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, two questions. When you were buying, you said buy silver. What type did you buy? Did you buy coins or collectibles?
I buy American Eagles. I buy, one or two every paycheck. I don't buy a whole bunch. I mean, I buy American Eagles, and I mean, this is my opinion, and like I said, there's a million ways to do this. I buy American Eagles because they are issued by the government and they are legal tender. And I buy them from a trusted source, so I know they are silver. Believe it or not, there are fake Morgan dollars and fake 365 coins floating around that have been fabricated by the Chinese. I mean, I'm like, or whoever. I was like, really? So I buy from a company called APMEX, which is up in Oklahoma City. I trust them. Usually it's the postage fees that get me. It costs a little bit more to do it.
Eagle coins a little cheaper.
Yeah, Eagle.
They're good.
Yeah.
Second
But
question.
where are they out of? You know, sorry.
I just found them on the internet.
On the internet, I'll have to look
I
them
bought a
up.
lot of stuff. I don't know where they are.
Okay.
As far as weapons, what's the minimum?
If I could only have one gun, and keep in mind, I've been carrying a gun for going on 20 years now between the military and law enforcement. If I could only have one gun, it would be a pump-action 12-gauge shotgun. The most versatile weapon ever invented. Now, for some of you who are smaller, that the 12 gauge is a lot, you can go with a pump-action 410 or a 20 gauge or whatever. I personally would like to have, one long gun and one pistol. And that's that's my opinion. Weapons are one of those things you get what you pay for. If you go down and you buy a high-tech or one of those guns like that, a high power, you're not getting a good gun. You need to go with a major manufacturer. In shotguns, Remington 870, Winchester Defender, those are both, or the Mossberg 500 or 590 are both excellent, all three excellent weapons. I really wasn't going to talk about guns, but hey, I'll answer questions about anything. So that's just me. Like I said, if I could only have one gun, it would be a 12-gauge pump action because it's an extremely versatile weapon.
About once a month, Cavell's has a sale on those trench guns.
Yeah.
The full, I think they got 8 rounds, pumps.
I don't like pistol grip shotguns. I like ones with the shoulder stop. That's a personal opinion based on some training and some scenarios that I've had to look at, some officer-involved shootings. We can get into that later, though. Go ahead, sir.
Great presentation. Love your personal comment about not surrounding yourself with people who survive this world. But one subject you didn't cover, and I never see get covered, is sanitation.
Yes.
What happens when the pump station fails and it doesn't get fixed for 3 weeks?
Exactly. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of little areas like that we can go in depth. We can sit here and talk all night long. A lot of these books cover that, about how to dig basically like a cat trench in your backyard. Sanitation is huge. There's a book called The Blue Death. It's on my list. A guy named, I think, Robert Morris is his name, wrote it. It's about the cholera outbreak and what caused it. Cholera was a huge thing 100 years ago, and they didn't really know what it was until he discovered, or not him, the guy that discovered it, that the sewage was basically contaminating the drinking water supply. And that was what was spreading the outbreak of cholera. Sanitation is big, and that's why, if you look at the infant mortality rates or the children mortality rates in a place like the United States versus something like Africa, most of that is due to sanitation. It's a huge thing, and it's something we need to consider taking a study for. Anybody else? Sir?
I'm with the Texas State Guard, 5 hurricanes in Texas. I'll share a couple of minutes of the things we found. With Ike, for example, you couldn't get gasoline, not because there wasn't gasoline, because there's no electricity. And we saw vehicles, obviously, they're doing on top of the car. So they obviously prepared. Kind of in Houston, we were passing out food for 2 days, we had 5 million people without power. The only thing that worked was ham radio. Cell phones were down, landlines were down, all the ham radio stuff was up. And you're absolutely right about all the computers and stuff. Thank you. In McAllen, when Dolly hit, went to Harlingen and did what we call pod mission, point of distribution. One of the problems in Harlingen was there was no water because there was no electricity. Without electricity, there's no pumps. So they were completely without water. So we were passing out water heater meals, which are self-heating meals, and ice. And that was a big thing. We were going through several truckloads a day. Traffic was horrible, as you can imagine. It was extremely dangerous downtown in Houston because the amount of glass that had come off the building. That was another big thing. One of the problems we had in Ike was shelters, if you depend on the government to support you. We had great plans, but nobody ever planned for a hurricane that wide. They had all kinds of shelters identified, and there were shelters east of Houston and west of Houston and north of Houston, and the plan was, wherever the hurricane hits, we'll go to the shelters where it didn't hit. Nobody expected a hurricane 300 miles wide. Took out all the shelters. And as everything else, we were making it up as we went along. So, there are also, this is a sad part, there are also professional refugees out there.
Yeah.
They show up and the first thing they ask for is, where's my FEMA credit card? Which FEMA will do for you. So I think bottom line is what you're saying here is absolutely true. I've seen people that, were hit with this thing. Houston had, the day after it hit, I think the number was 5 million people without electricity. Some of those people were without electricity for over 2 weeks. And that was with a Herculean effort. We had people from as far away as Tennessee, electric company people, in there trying to restore power, and it still took them 2 weeks. So, fortunately, we don't live on the coast up here, but these things are absolutely real. And
We've been affected by hurricanes before.
yeah, oh yeah.
It's far north.
So, thank you very much.
Yeah. How long have you been in the state guard?